Once there was a clan of gypsies, and they lived on the lands of a prince. And these were wealthy gypsies. They had good horses. One young man called Vaida had the best horse, a white horse called Samuel. One day, Vaida went to his father and said, "Why am I living like a monk, like a holy candle? It's time for me to wed. Tell me, where can I find the gypsies where I'll find my wife?" So Vaida's father said, "A long way from here, across the river Dnieper, there is a clan of wealthy gypsies, and there is a woman there many people have heard speak of for her beauty. Her name is Ruzha. Many princes, many aristocrats, many rich merchants, many gadgis, non-gypsies, have tried, but none have been able to impress the family. You could try there." And so, the very next day, Vaida dressed in his finest clothes and rode like the wind on Samuel until they came to the river. It was wide. He could see the gypsy encampment on the other side. And he said to the horse, "Well, what now?" Now, the horse, Samuel, could understand gypsy language. And he began to paw the ground and neigh and point his head in the direction of the gypsy camp, which meant going through the river. So Vaida said, "Well, we only love once, we only die once, let's go." And together they went down into the river and swam across. And so it was that Vaida and Samuel arrived dripping wet at the camp of the gypsies. Now, Ruzha's brothers, he had been warned about her. A whole gang of them came towards him looking very fierce and said, "Who are you and where do you come from?" And he said, "Please, I am cold and wet. Can I not sit by the fire and drink some tea first?" So they led him to the fire, and while he was sitting, he was looking around, and he saw her. Not only was she physically beautiful, but she seemed to emanate something from within. His eyes went misty, and whenever they caught the eyes of Ruzha, she too fell in love with him. She saw him sitting by the fire and in a flash knew and said to herself, "There sits my destiny." They continued to catch each other's eyes, and when an opportunity came, he whispered in her ear quickly, "Tell them that you want to read my fortune." And a few minutes later, she announced in front of the whole family, "Young man, I wish to read your fortune." And he replied, "Yes, I have had a great deal of misfortune recently. I would be very glad of your fortune reading." And she beckoned to the tent nearby. Now, he went into the tent first, and Ruzha's brother, one of her brothers, whispered to her, "See if you can get that fine waistcoat off him." Now, up to this point, he had only spoken in Russian, not in the gypsy tongue, because he didn't want to alert the brothers to his intention that he might want to wed Ruzha. But as soon as they were in the tent, he said to her, "Tell me, do your brothers have racing horses?" And she said, "We have the finest racing horses." And Vaida said, Good. Then I will do whatever you want me to do next." She said, "Give me the waistcoat." So he took off the waistcoat and she handed it to her brother and said, "With his compliments." Then Vaida told Ruzha what he would do. He said, we'll say that I want to sell Samuel, trade Samuel for one of your horses. And I'll convince your father that we have a race. After 2 circuits, be ready. I will come by and pick you up and put you on the back of the horse. Do you want this? She said, more than anything. So, after the so-called fortune-telling, Vaida stepped out and said to the brothers and the father sitting there around the fire, I hear you have good horses and I would like to trade. The father came over and looked at Samuel, the white horse of Vaida, checked its teeth, checked its fetlocks, checked the withers, looked the horse all over. It was a very good horse. And the man said, I know a good horse when I see it. Let's do this, said Vaida. I want to show you how fast he is too. Saddle up one of your fastest horses and we'll have a race. How about 2 circuits around here? The father agreed. One of the brothers saddled up one of their horses and the race began. And they raced first once, and at this point Samuel was lagging behind. And then towards the end of the first circuit he drew up level with the other horse, and then in the second round he took off and left the Gypsy's horse way behind, and he was going so fast he swept around Vaida, put out his arm, he caught a hold of Ruzha, he pulled her up behind him on the saddle, and they fled. And they went like the wind with Ruzha's black hair flying out behind her, and they were across the river before the brothers and the father even had understood what had happened. They rode like the wind all the way back to Vaida's family and were swiftly wed. And after they were married, they went back to Ruzha's family to announce that she was the bride and that they were married, because we don't want any bad blood between 2 Gypsy clans. And this is what happened. Vaida was welcomed as their brother-in-law, their son-in-law, and there were days and days of feasting to celebrate this marriage. And when all that was done, they returned to Vaida's family. And they were very much in love and very happy. And a year went by. And a second year went by. And then Ruzha found that she was expecting a baby. And at this point, Vaida would not let her do anything. He did all the housework for her. He did her share of the cooking. He did anything and everything that she wanted and was happy to do so. But his mother, she did not like this at all. This was not the way it was supposed to be. And she started to think poisonous thoughts towards Ruzha. The more pregnant Ruzha became, the angrier Vaida's mother became. Now one day, Ruzha had a longing for a certain kind of fish, and Vaida said he would go and get it for her, which involved quite a long ride by horse to a lake. And he was gone quite some time. And while he was gone, his mother went down to the stream and caught a poisonous snake and cooked it and fed some to Ruzha. And soon later she began to feel very, very unwell, and she had a terrible fever. And the mother-in-law said, lay still, lay still. But Ruzha said, no, I must go and meet Vaida. I must go and look for him. And she stood up, she left the house, and she went as far as the garden gate. And there at the garden gate, she clutched her side, and then her body began to change into a rowan tree. And the rowan tree had green leaves and red berries and blossom. And when Vaida came back, he went into the house looking for Ruzha. He asked his mother, "Where is she?" The mother said, "Well, she went out looking for you. I don't know where she is." And so he retraced his steps and came to the gate and saw, I don't remember there being a rowan tree here before. But the blossom and the berries and the leaves were so lovely that he thought, "I will take a branch and I will find her and I will give it to her." And he reached up to take a branch, and then he heard Ruzha's voice coming from the tree. And she said, "Don't break my bones, Vaida, please." He knew it was her. And he reached up just to touch the tree. And when his fingers touched the branch of the tree, he began to change into an oak tree that stood strong beside the rowan, beside Ruzha. And when this happened, Samuel, his horse that was standing there at the gate, neighed and fell on his knees. The saddle fell off, and Samuel turned into a heather bush, and the saddle turned into a snowball bush. Now, a little while later, Vaida's father, impatient with waiting for Vaida and Ruzha to come in for the dinner, he went looking for them. And when he came to the gate, he said, "I don't remember seeing a rowan, an oak, heather, and a snowball bush here ever before." And he stood and he stared and he said nothing, and he stared and he wondered, and slowly he understood that there was some kind of sorcery here. And he knew that his wife was very skilled in sorcery and that she hated Ruzha. So he called the entire gypsy court. And Vaida's mother was made to stand before them, and at first she would not tell the truth. But then she was made to take the gypsy oath, and that made her tell the truth of what she had done, how she had caught the poisonous snake, cooked it, and fed it to Ruzha. So the gypsies knew what she had done, and she was dealt with in a most unpleasant way until there was nothing left of her. But all the gypsies, wherever they go, when they see a rowan, they call it Ruzha. And when they see an oak, they call it Vaida. And when they see heather, they call it Samuel. And when they see the snowball bush, they call it the gypsy's saddle.